probably was around 7 years old when I first saw Tarzan. That left a big imprint in me and sort of led me years later to have this obsession with the elephant graveyard and try to rework that amazement that I had when I was a child. Wherever there's elephants, the myth in a certain way spread. The earliest incarnation of the myth that got spread in the West is the tales of Sinbad the Sailor, and that's the reason why I filmed the film in Sri Lanka, because I believe, from my point of view, the origin of the myth comes from there. Basically, I came out with a film or an experience, let's call it experience, that could, in a way, represent first my fascination for the myth and also my fascination by the idea of cinematic experience, what it means to sit on a space and have a journey. Sanctuary was premiered last year at the Tate Modern. After that, it was invited for Kunst and Festival des Arts in Brussels. We had a few performances in the Brigitte Deens Cultural Center, which is a former church and then supposedly an abattoir later on. One of the things that are important for me in terms of the presentation of Sanctuary is always find locations that in a certain way can hold an experience like Sanctuary proposes. And Sanctuary proposes in a certain way kind of a mix of a cinematic experience, but also a sound installation kind of experience. The sound installation is nearly as important as the visuals, so we've worked together with a few specialists on spatialization. We've worked together with Chris Watson, who is probably one of the most prominent nature and environmental recording artists, So we've created a soundtrack and a sound part of the whole experience that is very important. The elephants use the lower part of the frequency range that humans cannot hear to communicate most of their communication system. So for me, that was, during the research, was something that was totally fascinating for me, this idea of the elephant using a sort of a physical vibrational tool to communicate within members of the herd. And also, for me, it was also a very important dimension of the work. How can I embed that, and how can I create a film that in certain ways can use those vibrations, can use those ways of communications between species and create this sort of a merge, and how can we use that to affect the spectator. So we started working with a bioacoustician, Joyce Poole, who helped us to understand and also guide Chris and Tony, who are the sound recording people who actually travel to the greatest elephant sanctuary in Africa, which is in Kenya, called Amboseli, and guide it and help in certain way to get the maximum and the best sound material from elephants in freedom, and also from elephants communicating and using infrasound. So that was also, again, an important part of the project. And for me, the journey of the spectator was also a way to make him go through also an understanding of what the infrasound is. So to do that, we had to sort of work with a very important speaker company in the UK to develop specially a speaker that could reproduce lower ranges than, from under 20 hertz, which means that it's not an easy thing to do. And so with Tony Mayet from the University of Surrey, we developed this infrasound speaker that in a certain way also it's part of the installation of the whole sanctuary experience. While I was preparing and making the location scouting for the space with the Kunst and Festival des Arts curators and organizers, I came across Céline Brouès from Cinematek, who decided that it would be a good idea to take an advantage of my presence in Brussels, to do a short retrospective and to go back to some of the other projects. And of course, this was the starting point of this sort of Brussels 2 weeks Casas marathon, let's call it like this. A lot of these archive works that you see here in the exhibition in Cinematek are materials that I go to research, films that are being shot before in the locations where I'm supposed to film. And by doing that type of research, I sort of re-embed in myself the narratives that exist, the ways that people have portrayed this place or this myth or this, so for each of these locations, I always tend to do a lot of archive research about what exists, how many films have dealt about the elephant graveyard, how many of these films actually talk about it, how many they show it. I enjoy doing a lot of research for my projects. It's probably the part that I enjoy the most in a project, is to open up all these avenues and start seeing what the film wants to be, and the research sometimes takes quite a lot of time. I think that this was probably the 11th reincarnation of the project. I mean, it's probably like Avalanche 10 or something. It was shown before, probably like in the 3rd incarnation at Bozar. Every time is different. Every time I show images that I've never shown before. This is again one of the things that I try to do with my films, is to go to places that I can have the feeling of traveling in time, going to another state of our past in a certain way. So for me, that's one of the reasons why this village in Pamir is fascinating, and why it slowly became a kind of a lifelong project. Once I understood that, then the format of the way that I present the film was also to be open. Every time that I present the project is different. Every time that I present, it's a collaboration of live and local musicians from the places. In Les Ateliers, Claus was also with some Belgian collaboration with Belgian musicians, and also with Phil Niblock, who's been a sort of collaborator with the project since the beginning. I think that I feel always much more at home when I'm not at home.